how do you want to be perceived? Do you want to be that reckless rider on the road, or do you want to be a good role model for other riders within your own small community, with your friends or just being on a bike night? How do you want to be perceived, and what type of example do you want to be? And it really gets blown up when you're on YouTube, and it gets blown up when you're a motorcycle coach and a public servant as a firefighter. So these are things that I kind of developed myself with the help of my experience from other people. So awareness. Now I'm going to just read it real quick. It says, and this is going to be motorcycle related. So some well-trained motorcyclists have died or been injured in situations they should have recognized as hazardous, but didn't because they did not perceive the hazard. Now I used the awareness model from, I'm going to have it up on YouTube. So if you haven't seen that, oh, by the way, guys, thank you so much. We hit over 1,000 subscribers on the After the Ride channel. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But I took some of these things from the standing orders from wildlife firefighting. So, or not wildlife, wildland firefighting. And the biggest thing is that is one of the most dangerous things for firefighters is wildland. And they start to look at some of the common denominators, why people die, why people get injured, why people, get trapped, all these different things. And I'm trying to utilize that for why are people getting injured? Why are people dying on motorcycles? Why are people getting trapped in hazard traps as motorcyclists? So I'm pulling from my own expertise here. And I never really did do wildland firefighting, but it really does play back to structural firefighting, which I did. So when it comes to well-trained motorcyclists dying or being injured in situations where they don't see it, it does come back to awareness. You can either have an ego that diminishes your awareness. You can have alcohol, drugs, or anything like that can diminish your awareness. Lack of sleep can diminish your awareness. So at the end of the day, it could be a multitude of things. It could be something that you put yourself in, or it can be something that just happened because your brain is not working there. You're inattentional, blindness in that situation. So it's really important to be aware. So you can be the best rider, but if you can't see it, it doesn't matter. You can still crash. So when I talk about fundamentals and I talk about knowing the basics, keep it simple, stupid, KISS. I think a lot of people from other communities understand that. And I think that really does apply to motorcycling because it's just, there's too much to be aware of if you're adding more and more and more and more. Think about where you're at. Are you in a situation where you need to have all these massive amount of skills? And if it is, great, keep learning, keep adding more and more tools to that toolbox. But if all you're doing is riding from home to work, from work to home, or to the grocery store real quick on the way home, do you need to have 20 different hammers in your toolbox? Should you just have maybe one or two that you're really good at? One or two really good skills, tools? That's what I'm trying to get at, guys. Fundamentals, basics is all you really need in maybe that situation of going to and from work. So if you're in that position, learn the basics, master the basics. Don't start adding a bunch of different random things that you may or may not ever use. It's good to have sometimes if you ever want to go to that path, but understand and learn the basics and be aware. Awareness is one of the biggest things here. If you're not situationally aware, it doesn't matter how amazing you are with all those 20 hammers. Be 100% focused and perfectly trained in those one or two hammers that you have, and then now focus 90% of your time on that situational awareness. And that's where I get at with the awareness thing. So the next one is going to be attitude, and this is kind of that mindset that I talk about in my crash videos, is that you need to have the right attitude. So I'm going to once again read it from my notes that I have here, is that many motorcyclists are overconfident in their attitude. They approach every ride as if they are invincible. Some seem to need to prove their aggressiveness by taking inordinate risks. Other riders brag about violating safety practices like riding without proper gear. You know anybody personally, or you've heard of anybody that is like, I don't need gear, screw gear. I don't need a helmet. All I need is gloves or whatever. I don't even need whatever it is. That's the wrong attitude to have for safety. And it's honestly the wrong attitude to have for performance. A lot of times you're going to want to have a helmet to keep your eyes, from hitting a bug, or your bugs hitting your eyes and vice versa. You want to have good vision. So not having proper eye protection can hurt you performance-wise. Same thing with gloves. The tactile feel of hands getting sweaty without gloves could easily slide off. What about pants? Having some really good pants to where it makes it so you can grab that tank a lot easier with your thighs. What about boots, where you have that midsole shank to keep it so that you are not, compressing your foot onto that peg, which will make it to where it's a lot harder to turn, gives you more fatigue and all these different things. So performance-wise and safety-wise can go together. So make sure you have that gear. Make sure you have that stuff. But when we go back a little bit, where it says many motorcyclists are overconfident in their attitude, is that I passed the MSF. Let's say I pass a class, the beginner class, I'm good. I'm 100% safe now. No, you're not. You have to consistently keep practicing, constantly. Practice makes permanent. Okay, so if you want to keep practicing the wrong things, that's going to be your permanent habit. If you practice the right things over and over and over again, or at least attempt to try to practice the right things over and over again, you're going to get permanent good habits, and that is what you want to do. So making sure that you're not overconfident, because that'll push you over past your limits too when you're riding. So if you're like overconfident for this turn, you're like, I can take this turn at 100 miles an hour, when you deep down you can't, but you're going to be overconfident, it can cause a problem of you going too wide. So riding within your limits is also a very big thing when it comes to attitude. It says they approach every ride as if they are invincible. Guys, you're not. Just because you have full gear on, you have full leathers, full everything, you have sliders, all these different things, it doesn't matter. People are in cars and die a lot, and they have airbags, A, B, C, D posts, they have seat belts, they have crumple zones, they have all these different things, and they still die. So being on a motorcycle and having a helmet and possible gloves and maybe a full tracksuit is not going to protect you when you're hitting something going 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, when you should only be going 20, 30, 40, 50, for those specific things. So making sure that we're not riding aggressive, and making sure that we are not taking risks that are not mitigated. So a lot of people like to take risks, and that's perfectly fine. But I personally like to make sure I take an educated and mitigated risk every single time. I do not ever want to put myself in a situation where I'm taking a risk just for the sake of taking a risk. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a reason. There has to be something. In the fire service, you risk a lot to save a lot. You risk nothing to save nothing. So why am I risking a lot for this turn when I get nothing out of it? What do I get out of it? A chance to crash? That's all I get. Same thing with lane filtering, lane splitting, or high speed riding in traffic. What is the risk? What are you gaining out of that? Adrenaline? It's not worth it to me. It might be worth it to you, but to me, it's not worth it. So remember, risk a lot to save a lot, or risk a lot to gain a lot. Risk nothing to gain nothing. Maybe that's going to be good for the motorcyclist community here. The next thing is accountability. So this really does tie into the awareness and the attitude, is that accountability. So personal accountability is the belief that you're fully responsible for your own successes and failures and the consequences that follow. And that's going to be a big thing. We'll talk obviously a little bit more about that. It's a choice, a mindset, and an expression of integrity. This is one of the biggest problems I see with everybody, humans. There's not enough personal accountability in this world. There really isn't. And I put here is that you are fully responsible. The belief that you're fully responsible for your own successes and your failures. So I know a lot of people that will say, hey, I did this, all this good stuff I did. But then when there's a failure, it's like, oh, that was somebody else's fault. You can't do that. You literally cannot do that. You will not learn at all. So if we can apply this to motorcycling, so you pass the MSF or whatever, you pass a class, okay? Give yourself that congratulations. You did a good job. You did amazing. But now you're out riding and somebody cuts you off, or somebody does something, and now you're like, well, that driver is an asshole. That driver shouldn't have done that. We need to have laws against phones. We need to make sure that people aren't distracted driving. This person saw me but didn't do what they're supposed to do. So it's their fault, their fault, their fault. We can't do that. You just passed a class. You're super proud of your riding skill, But then now this happens and now it's all their fault. Maybe we need to practice more. We need to learn more. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And maybe it's because your situational awareness isn't up to par. Maybe this and this and this is not up to par. And that is where having the accountability is very important, because it is an expression of integrity. It means that you are fallible. That means that you are not perfect. And that means that you can get better. And that is where it's super important. Okay. Accountability, I believe, across everything is just failing everywhere. There's nobody that wants to take the negative accountability. Nobody wants to take the failures and then learn from them. This sucks. Having a failure sucks. You're out practicing in a parking lot, you're doing amazing U-turns, and then you drop the bike, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to blame yourself, or are you going to try to find an excuse like, okay, well, is there gravel on the ground? Okay, yeah, gravel on the ground caused me to dump the bike. I'm perfect. It's the gravel's fault. Well, then why can't you learn how to do that on gravel with a loss of traction? So this is where the accountability really comes in. And when it comes to just the normal human being, you see it all the time. Car accidents, it's their fault, their fault, their fault. And I know probably legally you want to say that so you don't have to worry about insurance and all that stuff, or let the insurance fight it. Because if you do admit, you're going to get, it's just automatic. But I mean, you see that with kids. You see that with kids, and that's fine. Kids do that all the time, but don't grow up still having that. Personal accountability will make it to where you'll be a better rider, a better person overall. And that will help you with your awareness. That'll help you out with your attitude. Knowing that you can fail and you do fail will make it so that you're not going to ride like you're invincible. It's not going to make it to where you're going to ride and take inordinate risks, because you know that you are the reason why you fail. And you know that the consequence of failing, especially on something big like taking a turn at 80 miles an hour and going off, is going to carry a very big consequence. But if you take that turn appropriately, you have really good body positioning, and after the turn, you're like, okay, maybe I could have countersteered a little bit better. That line was, out, in a little bit. I could do better on that. Let's do it next time and do better. That is a personal accountability. So I think that's what's super important. I think those are 3 things that motorcycle riders or even human beings should have in terms of how to learn. And why you should do that? Well, it's going to make you better. It's just going to make you a better person. Accept it, swallow your pride, and be accountable for your own actions. So with that said, I hope you guys ride safe, be safe, and thank you for stopping by after the ride. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. Really appreciate it. I'll be seeing you guys around.